Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, good afternoon, good tomorrow, or whatever time it is, wherever you are right now. This is John Pershing Smith, or JP to my friends, and I'll be your host today on this podcast. Our story today is one that someone sent to me several years ago, and I thought, man, this is really worth sharing with our listeners. But before I begin this, let me preface this to say, as a little boy myself in the late 1940s, in the very early 50s, I remember my grandmother had a phone. This was even before such a thing as a rotary phone, and she was on a 4-party line. Now, that meant that the line was shared with 4 families, but everyone knew the operator, and the operator knew everyone. The 4-party line had a special ring for each of the parties, so they would each know whether to answer it. I can remember my Mama Ruth, my grandmother on my mother's side, picking up that phone and Myrtle would say, "Number, please," and Mama Ruth saying something like, "Myrtle, would you please bring up Pastor Green's number?" Myrtle would reply, "Well, you have to call back later, Ruth. He and Mrs. Green have gone to Woolworths." See, Myrtle knew everybody, and Myrtle knew everybody's business. No one minded that she minded their business. At that time, businesses had a wall phone with a crank on the side so you could ring up somebody. Those were simpler, gentler times. And hey, I can see some of you out there right now nodding your head because you know what I'm talking about, right? Our story today revolves around this time frame in America, and it goes like this, as the author Wayne writes, quote, "When I was a young boy, my father had one of the first telephones in our neighborhood. I remember the polished old case fastened to the wall and the shiny receiver hung on the side of the box. I was too little to reach the telephone, but used to listen with fascination when my mother talked to it. Then I discovered that somewhere inside this wonderful device lived an amazing person. Her name was Information Please, and there was nothing she didn't know. Information Please could supply anyone's number in the correct time. My personal experience with the genie in the bottle came one day when my mother was visiting a neighbor. Amusing myself at the tool bench in the basement, I whacked my finger with a hammer. Oh, the pain was terrible. But there seemed to be no point in crying because there was no one at home to give me sympathy. Well, I walked around the house, sucking on my throbbing finger, finally arriving at the stairway. Oh, the telephone. Quickly, I ran for the bar stool up in the parlor, and I dragged it to the landing. Climbing up, I unhooked the receiver in the parlor and held it to my ear. Information, please, I said into the mouthpiece just above my head. A click or two, and a small voice spoke to my ear. Information? I hurt my finger, I wailed into the phone. The tears came readily enough now that I had an audience. Isn't your mother home, came the question. Nobody's home but me, I blubbered. Are you bleeding, the voice asked. No, but I hit my finger with a hammer and it hurts. The voice said, can you open the icebox? I said I could. The voice said, then chip off a little bit of ice and hold it on your finger. After that, I called Information Please for everything. I asked her for my help with my geography, and she told me where Philadelphia was. She helped me with my math. She told me to put my pet chipmunk that I'd caught in the park just the day before would eat fruits and nuts. Then there was a time Petey, our pet canary, died, and I called Information Please, and I told her the sad story. She listened and then said things grown-ups use to soothe a child. But I wasn't consoled. I asked her, why is it that birds should sing so beautifully and bring joy to all the families, only to end up as a heap of feathers on the bottom of a cage? She must have sensed my deep concern, for she said quietly, Wayne, always remember that there are other worlds to sing in. Suddenly, I felt better. Another day, I was on the telephone. Information, please. Information, said the now familiar voice. How do I spell fix? I asked, and this took place in a small town in the Pacific Northwest. When I was 9 years old, we moved across the country to Boston, and I missed my friend Information very much. You see, Information, please, belonged in that old wooden box back home, and I somehow never thought of trying the shiny new phone that sat on the table in the hall. As I grew into my teens, the memories of those childhood conversations never really left me. Often in moments of doubt and perplexity, I would recall the serene sense of security I had then. I appreciated about how patient, understanding, and kind she was to have spent her time talking with the little boy. A few years later, on my way west to college, my plane put down in Seattle. I had a half hour or so between planes. I spent 15 minutes or so on the phone with my sister who lived there now. Then, without thinking about what I was doing, I dialed my hometown operator and I said, "Information, please." Miraculously, I heard the small, clear voice I knew so well. "Information?" I hadn't planned this, but I heard myself saying, "Could you please tell me how to spell fix?" There was a long pause, then came a soft-spoken answer. "I guess your finger must be healed by now." I laughed gleefully. "So it really is you. I wonder if you have any idea how much you meant to me during the time." "I wonder," she said, "if you know how much your phone calls meant to me. I never had any children, and I used to look forward to your calls." I told her how often I had thought of her over the years, and I asked if I could call her again when I came back to visit my sister. "Please do," she said. "Just ask for Sally." 3 months later, I was back in Seattle, and a different voice answered, "Information?" I asked for Sally. "Are you a friend?" she said. "Yes, a very old friend," I answered. "I'm sorry to have to tell you this," she said. "Sally had been working part-time for the last few years because she was sick, and she died 5 weeks ago." Before I could hang up, she said, "Wait a minute. Did you say your name was Wayne?" "Yes," I answered. "Well, Sally left a message for you. She wrote it down in case you called. Let me read it to you." The note said, "Tell Wayne there are other worlds to sing in. He'll know what I mean." Wayne thanked her and hung up. He knew what Sally meant. This is the end of Wayne's story. But never underestimate the impression you might make on other people. You have the power within you to change someone's day-to-day. You can have an effect on their attitude. You can cause them to have a better day just by treating them nice. Sally made an indelible impression on young Wayne with nothing more than kindness. A lifetime impression even though they had never met in person. A good way to change someone's attitude is to change your own, because the same sun that melts ice can also harden clay. Whose life have you touched today? Lee Iacocca, the famed Chrysler CEO, said, "The thing that lies at the foundation of positive change, the way I see it, is through service to a fellow human being." Harvey Mackay said, "Positive thinking is more than just a tagline. It changes the way we behave. And I firmly believe that when I'm positive, it only makes me better, but it also makes those around me better." Wayne Boggs said, "A positive attitude causes a chain reaction of positive thoughts, events, and outcomes. It is a catalyst, and as such, it sparks extraordinary results." In Matthew 25:40-45, the king will reply, "Truly I tell you, whatever you do for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you do for me." And that, my friends, is what Information Sally did for Wayne. Hey, folks, I hope you enjoyed today's teaching podcast. Now, thank you for joining us today. Do something kind for someone else today, and I look forward to seeing you all in the winner's circle. God bless. Make it an awesome day. So long for now.